Hello there and welcome to this mini review, first impressions style video about Monster Hunter Ryze for the Nintendo Switch. The Monster Hunter series is one that I'm actually pretty familiar with, and I've played almost all of the main series ones to some extent. I started with Monster Hunter Freedom, which was a sort of expanded version of the very first Monster Hunter game that was released for the PSP, and I've stayed pretty much up to date with the series since then. Getting Monster Hunter Freedom 2 for the PSP, 3 Ultimate for the 3DS and Wii U, 4 Ultimate for the 3DS, and of course more recently I played quite a bit of Monster Hunter World for the PS4. The reason that I bring this up is because I'm looking at Monster Hunter Ryze through the lens of someone who already has quite a lot of experience with these games, and the reason this is worth noting is because I would imagine that if you were brand new to the series, it would have an absolutely huge learning curve before you felt fully comfortable with it. There's so many different systems at play here, with armor sets where each individual part has its own stats and passive effects. There's a total of 14 weapon types which completely change the controls of the game during combat. Then there's loads of weapons within those 14 types which all have their own stats and passive effects as well. There's a reasonably in-depth crafting system to make tools to assist during combat. There's a buddy system where you can level up your pet characters and send them scouting for items or have them assist you in the field. And there's way more on top of that. The bottom line here is that it's a very complicated game, which I would imagine would be an instant turn-off for a lot of people. Having said that though, it's one of those games where if you do persist with it, it becomes one of the most gratifying games you'll ever play, and you'll eventually start taking pleasure in testing out the new features of the game and finding out how everything ticks. Since picking this game up on release, I haven't really played anything else, and I've become a little bit addicted to it. It's one of those games where you're trying to get to sleep, but you just keep thinking about it, and it ends up keeping you up, which I've not experienced in a very long time. The basic gameplay of Ryze is exactly like any other Monster Hunter game. Most quests have you go out into an open location and scout down a particular monster, and then slowly whittle its health down as you attempt to kill or capture it. Then you carve it up and harvest parts from it, which you then turn into new weapons and armor, which then makes you more powerful and able to take down the more difficult monsters, which then leads to even more powerful weapons and armor, which allows you to take on even more powerful... well, you get the idea. But with each entry in the Monster Hunter series, this gameplay is honed and tweaked in such a way where every single one that comes out makes this experience better and better, and I would probably say that this is the best Monster Hunter game ever made. The key differences between Ryze and the other ones is that you now have access to something called a wire bug, which is utilised in both traversal and combat, making it an incredibly versatile little tool, and I feel like going back to say Monster Hunter World and not having this would feel very weird. You can use it to zip into the air, effectively allowing you to jump or dash around quickly. You can use it to run up walls, which adds a lot of verticality to the way levels are designed, and every single weapon has several moves which use the wire bug and can cause massive damage. You can't just spam any of these abilities though, because upon using the wire bug a single time, you then need to wait for a cooldown timer before being able to use it again, so it all feels very well balanced. At first, this wire bug felt a little bit clunky and I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, but when you get used to it and you're able to pull off all of the different abilities with muscle memory, it's so satisfying. You'll be dashing out of the way of attacks, performing parries, or just outright decimating your foes with the use of this, combined with the already deep combat system, and it creates a sense of flow that just feels amazing. Another new component to Ryze is the fact that you can now have a dog friend follow you around, and these are referred to as palamutes. Unlike the cat friends which have been featured in every single game in the series though, these palamutes can actually be rode to allow you to very quickly dash around the levels in a way which wasn't possible in any of the previous games. You can even use items and gather resources while on the backs, which makes them an absolutely integral part of your squad. Between the palamutes and the wire bug, there's a clear emphasis with Ryze making the game much faster paced than usual, and this is also achieved through the many quality of life improvements made to the game outside of these things too. For example, just like Monster Hunter World, Ryze's levels are massive open areas with no loading screens, something which the series is fully committed to now, which is amazing and to be honest makes going back to the old games very difficult. You no longer have to throw paintballs at enemies to mark them on the map, and they're all actually just there to begin with. On gathering quests, whatever items you need to find are just displayed as little green dots on the map, so you aren't blindly fumbling around for hours looking for a particular mushroom or something. And you can also view a detailed map which displays all of the resources in the area, so if you're looking to do some mining, all of the ore deposits will be displayed for you. There's even an auto crafting feature, which if used will take any of the raw items you collect and instantly turn them into something more potent. So for example, by default the game will take any herbs you collect and instantly make them into potions, which are the main healing item of the game. The thing is though, is that while all of these changes make the gameplay experience a lot smoother and much better for playing in short bursts, something which is important with this being a Switch game, I can't help but feel like some of the magic of the early Monster Hunter games has been lost here. In the early games, it felt like much more thought had to go into each hunt, and it made it feel like more of an event than what it feels like in Ryze. In the earlier games, you went into the main levels and you had absolutely no idea where the monster was that you're trying to hunt. This led to you needing to learn more about its habitat and where it likes to go, and it made the levels more memorable because you were actually exploring them rather than just following a dot on the map. Then when you eventually did find the monster, you had to manually mark it on your map by throwing a paintball at it, which again added to the whole hunting process because it felt like you were actually tracking the thing down. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I kinda miss some of the stuff like this from the early games, even if I completely understand why it's better to just cut some of these more tedious elements out. Another new feature to Ryze is the Rampage gameplay type. This is actually really cool and turns the game into this wave defense mode where you can place turrets, NPCs and other defenses around a fortress, and then you have to stop a horde of monsters from storming the gates. It's very different to the main hunting gameplay and gives you something else to sink your teeth into if you want a bit more variety, and I ended up actually really enjoying this. Especially when you're playing it with a group of friends in the more difficult levels. When you're playing it on your own, it probably isn't quite as fun, but I feel like that's the case with any game that has co-op. But yeah, even though I might argue that some of the magic of the earlier games has been lost a bit in the way that you don't need to prepare as much for the hunts anymore, I think this ends up making the game much more accessible, faster paced, and more focused on the actual combat. Which, let's face it, is the part of the game most people want to be experiencing. So while that might be a minor criticism of mine, I can't deny that this is probably the best Monster Hunter ever. Of course, the elephant in the room is that World looks much better in terms of raw graphics, but Ryze looks pretty darn good for a Switch game, and I was never put off by the visuals on display here. So even then, Monster Hunter World doesn't have a huge advantage in this area. Plus, the load times in Ryze are insane, like they're exceptionally fast, and you can tell that this is a game made from the ground up for the Switch. I think with the new things Ryze brings to the table, it probably does have the edge over World, just by a little bit. Although, admittedly, I didn't ever play the Iceborne expansion to World, so I'm only judging it based on the original version of the game, and even then, it's been a while since I've played it. So there is always the possibility that if I went back to play Monster Hunter World, I might prefer it to Ryze. But regardless of that, my point here is that Monster Hunter Ryze is easily either the best or second best in the entire series. If you get over the initial complexity of Monster Hunter Ryze, you'll find not only an insanely rewarding single-player game with a fantastically addictive gameplay loop, but also one of the very best co-op games available on the Switch. And with the online working exceptionally well and being completely seamless too, it makes the game a complete joy to play with others. I wasn't actually going into this expecting very much, but I honestly would say that this is a must-play Switch game. It's only been out for just over a week, and I've already put in over 24 hours, so that should say to you how much I like this game. It's highly recommended. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Monster Hunter World. Let me know in the comments if you like seeing these shorter mini review style videos, and if there's anything you think I could improve about them. I could start making these more of a regular thing if you enjoy this more casual style of video, which would open up the opportunity for me to talk about more newer games and just stuff I'm playing in my spare time that I'm not doing a full review for. There's so many games that I really enjoy and I play a lot that I just never talk about because I can't commit the time to doing a massive script for them and then doing a complicated edit and filming session on top of that. So these more loose and less in-depth videos could be a way of me putting out more regular content if you'd like to see this sort of thing more often. So yeah, let me know and I'll see what I can do. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to see more stuff like this coming soon, and until next time, bye!